Well, welcome back. And this is our little chat that we have as often as I can get to this in our strange world today. I'm just delighted to have the opportunity to take an apparent cup of tea. Have you ever noticed in movies, etc., they seem to pour the tea out and you think they really didn't have a full cup of tea. They must have had about this amount in it. Anyway, aside from that. This is about taking the time. And I've got a little bit of an idea about describing something to you. And if you wouldn't mind just a few minutes of me just indulging myself to try and see whether I can get what I'm experiencing across and hopefully would be helpful for you. Okay? So I took off my wall this magnificently framed trip that Trina and I took up to Alaska, from Anacortes at the bottom there up to Glacier Bay at the top. And it was a wonderful trip, and we're so grateful to have done it. Just for let me tell you the reason, and then I can get it away. So as you see this, this felt tip pin trip all the way up, it's called the Inside Passage. It's called the Inside Passage because literally you do go for a long period of time between a rock and a hard place. And there's a small amount of water between the two, and you have to ferret your way through that. It's, by the way, 2,600 miles up and down. And the reason I wanted to explain that was that Trina and I, she had had a heart attack and a stroke. And and she was a high-risk person. Her family both died young. So we did what we could, and for a few years, about 6 years. And then when we got to be 70 years of age, we asked our cardiologist, Dr. Landreth in Mount Vernon, whether we could possibly take this little boat and just the two of us sail up to Glacier Bay. And he looked at her numbers and everything else, and he said, well, you guys have done such a good job. I think you deserve to have something like this happen in your life. So I think you should do it. Now, we were going outside of cell phone range and everything else, so it was a risk factor, but we both prayed very carefully about it, and we decided we'd do it. And I took on the responsibility as the captain to make every possible decision for her safety. And I'm rather thinking about that now as the way we're responding to each other. We're going between a rock and a hard place now during this 15-day whatever that it turns out to be. And during that time, we may be a little bit eager to just get on with the trip and maybe take a risk and go outside the parameters that we've been given to live under. And I just feel that we need to do that. Let me explain what happened when we went up to Glacier Bay. Obviously, there are tides. And when there's a tide, the tide rises on one side of a narrow pathway, between the rock and the hard place, between a couple of islands. And as it rises up like this, it begins to torrent down through that gap. And when I say torrent, I mean it could sometimes go 7 or 8 knots. And the most my little boat could go would be 6. So if I tried to go against that flow that was coming down and I was going up against it, I would get pushed backwards. And so occasionally, because it just worked out that way, we did face those kind of torrents coming the wrong way. And what you do then is you pull aside away from that access for the water, over here somewhere, and you put the hook down, the anchor, and you make a cup of tea. And what I would do, I keep my eye on the depth sounder that we had in the boat, and as the depths started to rise, I realized that it was coming to that level at which they call slack water, when that torrent has stopped and it's about to tip the other way and go down this way. So when it starts to be, when it's absolutely slack, you pull out the anchor and you edge into that and you sit into that slowly, and it starts to flow under you, and it catches you and moves you along with it. So now it may do 5, 6, 7 knots, and you're doing 4 or 5 knots on top of that. Add the two together and you're speeding. It's really wonderful. I have this feeling, I really do, that when we wait upon the Lord, we renew our strength. And it appears that we can do more than we thought that we could do, because his hand is underneath us and we're flowing in the Spirit with what he is wanting. At the present moment, it would be very clear to me that what he wants is for the common good. He wants to turn everything to good for those of us who love him and are called according to his purposes. And I think his purposes are that we should love one another and love those people we come in contact with. It should be his flowing love at a time like this is just vital. So, if it seems to be pouring the other way at this present moment, the best thing that you and I can do is to put the hook down, get a cup of tea, sit down and wait for that water to become slack. Now, it may take 15 days, whatever it takes. God, being in control, which you and I know that he is, would want the very best for us, and that is going to come through us waiting upon him and knowing he loves us. Okay. Until next time we meet, keep encouraging one another, even if it's only 6 feet away. Just raise your voice a little. I love you as you pass by. God bless.